I'm Chris, that's Alex, and this is Occupy Pro Wrestling Live. Alex, roll that beautiful intro. All right, so we had to get on the call right here because we had to talk
Mm-hmm.
about this. Um, AEW airing the footage, some footage from All In London 8 months ago backstage, the altercation between CM Punk and Jack Perry. As you and I know, and perhaps everyone knows, CM Punk no longer works for AEW. I don't know if that's breaking news. You know, it, I'm sorry to
Got some
spoil
news
that.
for you. Yeah.
Sorry to spoil that. And so I want to talk about it, and I want to start with last week actually, and kind of like how I see things. So last week on Dynamite, AEW opened up with a promo from Edge, which seemed to, in a way, counter an interview that CM Punk gave about his time in AEW. And Edge came out, was kind of like, he came out without the title, right? The title belt. He said, "I'm Adam. I'm doing this right now as Adam and not as the Radar Superstar." Talking about his love for pro wrestling, how this locker room is great, and all that stuff. And anyone can go back and watch it. And like it fell out of place, right? I think that's a fair assumption. I think a lot of people thought about that.
Yeah.
Um, and so I don't know if this was aired on Collision or not. So I attended Dynamite and Collision last week live because I live in Massachusetts and it was in Massachusetts. And during what I perceived to be one of the commercial breaks during the taping of Collision, FTR gave a promo to us in the crowd about their love for pro wrestling. Again, that pro wrestling pays their bills. Gives their daughters braces, stuff like that. Again, making this impassioned promo about what AEW has done for them, what wrestling has done for them in the general pro wrestling. So and I thought, okay, that's great. These guys just want to be positive about pro wrestling. Alex and I, we love positivity in pro wrestling. That's what Occupy Pro Wrestling is about. It's
Yep.
occupying it positively. That's what the P stands for, and also pro, right? One of the P's. Um, and so these are great messages. And then on Saturday, something that I didn't know had happened because I watched the show live, and then because it was recorded in front of me, the matches anyway. And then of course we had WrestleMania on Saturday, and so I didn't watch Collision because I've already seen it more or less. So unbeknownst to me, they announced that Tony Khan announced, or someone announced, that we're going to air the footage from All in London, the Jack Perry and CM Punk altercation. CM Punk gave his side of the story where he didn't threaten anyone; he just choked a guy a little bit, as though that's a okay thing to do at work. But we'll get to that part. Um, and when I first heard that, I thought, no, this is going to be a bait and switch, right? But then Tony Khan doubles down and says, no, we're not going to do a bait and switch. It's going to be the real thing. And just a sense of dread kind of washed over me. And I don't know if you felt that, right? We had WrestleMania this weekend, so wrestling is at an
Yeah.
all-time high, I think.
Yeah.
And like when I saw that, when I heard that, it's just a wave of dread, right?
Yeah. I will say when I first saw the graphic, I was very careful to I kind of latched on to the specific wording that the graphic used, which was that they were promising never before seen footage from All In. So my very first gut reaction was no. They're not showing
No,
that
right?
footage, are
That's
they?
crazy. Like
Like cuz
we
I
can
could
all
see
agree that's
them
crazy.
like and when they kept leaning into, oh no, this will not be a bait and switch, when you had Tony Khan saying this will not be a bait and switch, I said to myself, okay, it's probably not going to be the actual Punk Perry footage, or it's going to be just enough to do something to do with the feud with FTR. That's the thing, because I'm just like, it's also, one thing that's been established before is that FTR and Punk have been buddies in the past. You know, they were buddies, especially during the time that Punk was in AEW. So that's all I was expecting. So yeah.
I mean, I had this sense of dread because once Tony Khan promised it, I'm like, well, now you can't go back because
Right.
Tony Khan is already this big meme for his big announcements, right? And once he decided, this was almost like a big announcement, right? Footage from All In that I was like, they can't go back on it. And I was just dreading it coming into tonight. Like, what the heck are they going to do? And so I want to talk about the segment, what we saw tonight, just a little while ago. So we saw it. We didn't just get the footage randomly. So it was the young. Of course, lost in all this is the Young Bucks were going to present this, right? This was announced in advance. The Young Bucks are going to do this. And so right now the Young Bucks are playing corporate shitheel characters. Hope with YouTube censors. Right. I said hit heel. That's what I said. They're these corporate smarmy characters. These corporate smarmy characters, right? And so they deliver this backstage vignette about how they want to avenge their loss at All In, and the reason they lost to FTR All In is because they were distracted being EVPs because of this altercation that happened backstage, and and they really handed up and really made this about them in the first place. They handed up, and then finally they dropped the footage. The footage is about 1 minute and 25 seconds long. Complete silence, airing on TBS. And we see CM Punk walk up to Jack Perry. They are exchanging words. Samoa Joe's pacing the background. There's some other producers, peoples around. I think Malachi Black walks up at some point. Then we see Punk shove Perry. Perry kind of like duck down, and then Punk get him in a headlock, and then they get separated. Saw Sanjay Dutt running in, and at the end, the kind of thing that everyone's making fun of is CM Punk leaned over towards Tony Khan, pointed at him, and presumably yelled at him. And this is probably where Tony Khan had felt that his life was threatened or whatever. And that's fine. I don't. That's fine. And then we get back and Young Bucks explain how this incident was why they lost to FTR, and the FTR was the mastermind behind the whole thing because they were friends with Punk. Well, never saying Punk, because obviously it doesn't work here anymore. So this is like a weird thing to do. And they close it out by saying that FTR is the masterminds, and they planned it so that they would throw the Young Bucks off their game, so they would beat them at London, right? End the segment. Not quite, because immediately FTR, runs out after the segment. I don't know if you caught this, but when they cut to Tony before and after this Young Bucks part, he's like looking down Tony Schiavone.
Yeah.
Like he looks pissed off to me.
Yeah.
In the footage.
Yeah, and I just to the quick interjection, because there was a thing he talked about it on his What Happened When podcast briefly with Conrad, just to say like he just to say that he didn't know what the footage was actually going to be, and he kind of gave some clarification on what he and other broadcasters are like given, what info they're actually given when they make announcements, because he had made an announcement about this segment on the Collision on Saturday. So I wanted to bring that context in because I'm like, that to me added a little bit extra context to looking at Tony Schiavone being like, what you could almost get that sense he's like, what did we just watch? Like what was this?
I do want to be fair to Tony because he's an absolute professional. It's probably more in character than out of character because
that's also fair.
Who despises the Young Bucks.
Oh yeah.
He despises all the really bad heels. So
yeah,
knowing that the Young Bucks are doing it, that makes sense. But it was like something clocked. Like, oh my God, Tony just looks absolutely despondent here.
Yeah.
But then FTR comes out afterwards. Again, cuts their promo about what wrestling has done for them and stuff like that. They're the best tag team in the world. kind of responding to the Bucks immediately, kind of reframing the segment that the Bucks are making excuses, and they're going to use this as an excuse when they lose again at Dynasty, and kind of reframing the segment a little bit to bring it back to what this should be about, right? The Young Bucks versus FTR, and so that's where we're at. Yeah, it's I don't know. I think. And the response I saw online was like, people are like, "Oh, Punk is right. Punk is right." No, Punk is still CM Punk's still a clown in this. Like, he still, had a backstage argument with someone and got himself fired. Like, I'll make that clear. And I'm sorry people are upset about that, but AEW is running a clown car tonight with airing this segment. So like, everyone's clowns, but AEW Tony Khan is driving the clown car. Airing this segment, airing this security footage. Never mind, the security footage was completely silent. They didn't do any editing at all. Like, I thought maybe commentary could talk over it and explain it. Maybe the Young Bucks could talk over it and explain it. Not that it would have made it any better, but it was just awkward to watch on TV. And I'm just sitting there like, is this it? Because the first 40 seconds of it are just Punk and Perry, nodding at each other, right? As far as we can tell, because all we know, they didn't say words. They just staring at each other, right? That's all they're doing, and then Punk shoves him and whatever. It's just like, did you see it was trending on Twitter, formerly known as X, formerly known as Twitter?
I didn't get to check the training as well.
WCW 2000.
Well, yeah.
And I even said this to you earlier and to some other people earlier. I'm like, this feels like late stage WCW, right? Where all publicity is good publicity. Like, that was
that's exactly like, and the thing that I kept thinking in the back of my head, like in the days leading up to this, was just, this is just going to be this. And Tony kind of admitted that the purpose of showing this footage, he admitted this in an interview with Sports Illustrated, saying, hey, this is, the driving force behind this is to give this to the audience and bring in fans, because there's a sort of a demand for stuff like this. I'm just like, he kind of, in some sense, he kind of admitted that this was a ratings ploy, but to see what actually unfolded was just like,
that does remind me of a comment that Tony Schiavone made after that segment, and that was, "Oh, FTR is not on our papers. They're not supposed to come out here right now." Like, trying to. I don't know about you, but I don't like it when the show calls attention to the fact that it's a show. Like, this is something that sometimes, like, WWE has done this in the past too, and I didn't like it then either. So I want to make this clear. So it's not hating AEW, but AEW seems to be lately trying to blur the lines between the fictional wrestling show and the real wrestling people. That they have started to, like, use insider terms more, and this is the kind of stuff that, again, late stage WCW did, right? They would talk about who was going to go over and who has heat and stuff like that. And I don't know, especially since Schiavone lived through it the first time. I don't know why he's doing it, other than, I guess, he's being told to. But this is not the first time that I've heard him mention, or someone on commentary mention it, that this is not on our papers. This is not on our show sheet. FTR coming out to respond to this. And they've used terms like heat and stuff. Well, they have heat, and I'm just, I don't know, reminding me that it's a show by using our terms, right? The marks, the smarks. They're our terms, right? When we talk on the show, right, we might use the words like kayfabe, we might use the word storyline when we're explaining how we're feeling. Like these are our words as fans, as smarks. And to hear them being used on TV it really takes me out of it. Don't remind me this is a show. Like, I know this is a show, but I'm watching it because because it's a show. I'm not watching it because it's real.
Yeah, I will say, at least it's not quite on the level of Tony Schiavone and WCW talking about someone going off script, but I definitely see what you're saying. Like,
I'm afraid that's gonna happen. Like, if that
go
off script.
Yeah, if that starts happening, man, I don't know what
I
to
don't
tell
know.
you.
I don't know. Um, so I here's the thing, and I kind of want to transition to it. Is
Mm-hmm.
you know I always like to see the positive side of wrestling. This is what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to not defend this segment in so much, but kind of explain it because I see the vision. Because if you can get past the fact that they showed this all in footage, um, the Young Bucks complaining that because they are EVPs, anytime they lose, it's the fault of everyone else because they're making them do their jobs or whatever. I think that's funny. That's hilarious. That's great. And FTR coming out and responding and talking about how the Young Bucks are always going to make excuses when they lose, but we're the best tag team in the world. I see the vision. It just didn't need the footage from All In. It didn't need Jack Perry and CM Punk. Like they could have done that without him.
Yeah,
They
that
could have made
that
they could have made stuff about FTR like, oh yeah, FTR drinks on the job and we have to do our jobs, and so that's why they beat us. Yeah,
yeah.
I would have preferred that to this for sure.
Yeah, that because the honest truth of it is I only saw one real upside to them actually showing this footage. And that is I think just hammering home the idea that Jack Perry is eventually going to make it back to AEW because the reality is like the thing of it is Jack Perry was indefinitely suspended from AEW following that incident. You know,
Right.
CM Punk, he was terminated with cause from the company. A couple months later, he shows up in WWE, and it's like, okay, well, but what because he was terminated with cause, he eventually was able to just go and make his big
Right.
homecoming to
Non
WWE.
compete ended.
Perry, meanwhile, is still indefinitely suspended for whatever part he played in the whole incident. We don't actually see we don't see what comes on the other side of that until like maybe the last 2-3 months or so. He started showing up in New Japan, uh, calling himself the scapegoat. Seen on New Japan programming, ripping up supposedly his AEW contract, and that's kind of where the hints and teases in previous, like the last 2 to 3 weeks, young, like last week in particular, there was a quick kind of moment from the Young Bucks where they kind of reference the scapegoat saying, "I love your work," uh, and they bring up Jack Perry in this segment, and that seems to be the main thing to come out of this, aside from what was the point of showing the footage itself. It's like they,
And
yeah,
Matthew Jackson was
mm-hmm,
wearing scapegoat T-shirt.
uh
You
huh.
know,
So it's like that's really what we get out of that, aside from them clearly making the ploy to get people to watch for that particular moment. And it's like you said, it was about a minute and a half of actual footage, and it's just like all it it kind of like it proves it because considering it shows truth to what Punk said in his interview. It also shows some truth to what was like actually reported
mm-hmm.
previously. And in the end, it just like you said. In the end, I can't say whether or not it was actually necessary to have this footage be a part of this whole segment
I
because
mean, neither the Young Bucks or FTR are in this footage. Like,
yeah.
you know,
So
this. I mean,
yeah.
we still have so many rumors about All In, about Punk and Kenny Omega getting into a fight, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Punk and the Young Bucks getting into a fight. Like they didn't show any of that. Which I don't want to see that footage. Like,
Yeah.
that's not the
Not
stuff.
everything needs to be seen. Yeah.
Not everything needs to be
Um.
seen. The stuff that the people behind the characters are doing behind the scenes, I don't need to see. Like, you know, AEW does not need to be a reality show. Where AEW's strengths is in its wrestling, not so much in its storytelling. They are up and down in storytelling. I think you and I can agree on that. I think a lot of people can agree on that.
For sure.
Um, and I don't know. It feels like a misguided attempt to especially with the high of WrestleMania, to try to just get people back on them. But I think we kind of proved this last decade that when you start pissing off the fans, they're going to leave. Like
Yeah.
WWE has high ratings right now, all the high fan engagement, but this is a
Mm-hmm.
very recent thing. Like WWE had a decade of giving the middle finger to the fans, and slowly but surely the audience dropped off and dropped off and dropped off. And now that Triple H has taken over creative, and Vince McMahon is completely gone, like WWE has seen a lot more fan engagement, a lot more ratings, in the last 6 months to a year that they didn't see before that. And a lot of that has to be, and we'll talk about this in our WrestleMania video, but a lot of this is about, the way they kind of pivoted when they realized the fans are rejecting things. And I don't think AEW's learned that lesson yet, and maybe they want to learn the hard way. Um, they're learning the hard way that not all publicity is good publicity. I think that is an outdated kind of way of thinking about publicity, because we have so many options, right, as fans in terms of wrestling. Or like if wrestling pisses you off, you can go do something else. There's just so much options now that like it doesn't make sense to me, because the reaction to this when they announced it was no one was excited to see this footage. Everyone was like, oh my god, AEW's a train wreck. Like, did you I didn't see a single person say, oh, I can't wait to see this footage. Maybe the CM Punk haters, I don't know.
No, because
But
no,
I'm not
I
really
didn't.
I'm kind of a CM Punk hater, but I didn't want to see this footage because I don't care. Like, he's not in AEW. I don't care. Like, he's fine in WWE. He's doing fun things in WWE. Whatever. It didn't work out in AEW because he has an ego problem, and that's fine. But we don't need to like beat us over the head with it.
Right.
I thought we were turning a corner, like with the push of Swerve Strickland, which is what this was like a very much the fan support type push. With his turn and stuff like that. And I thought, okay, we're finally turning the corner on these stories. The Young Bucks being heels is kind of what the fan base wants, because they're just better at it than being faces. And I thought, okay, and we're doing these things. I think they have decided to go down the route of any publicity is good publicity, and it's just it is causing people to turn the channel or turn it off, or not checking the AEW all the time, or checking every couple months to see if it's quote unquote better. And it really frustrates me, because wrestling is better now because AEW exists. This is something that Edge, Adam Copeland, had said in his promo last week. FTR also said it to the live crowd, that wrestling's better with AEW. So I don't want to see them squander it, go the way of, TNA, or, because TNA was legitimately an alternative for a while. National TV's deal. But, if you do one too many bad things, like TNA made bad decision after bad decision creatively, and they lost their audience, they lost their TV deal. And while TNA is doing fantastic things right now, it wasn't like that for like 15 years.
Yeah. No, they're just now coming back on the upswing, I think.
Yeah.
So
I don't think this would like kill AEW. AEW is not going to go away. They still do massive numbers for TNT, TBS, and I think they're happy with it. Time Warner. But we could see it, go the route of TNA, where it like just slowly drops off, and maybe not this TV contract, but next TV contract, it goes on Access TV or whatever.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think it's gonna come down to two things. It's gonna come down to what the numbers actually show as far as ratings and stuff, which is kind of weird to say in this year.
The rating will pop.
I think and then it'll come to I think considering the actual, I think the reactions of fans online, reactions of people watching, because I know I generally enjoyed Dynamite tonight overall as a way to set up for Dynasty. I was definitely, but that particular part, even that part of the actual segment, was not a highlight of the show for me tonight. And that's to me, that's the key. And I think fan reaction to that segment makes me hope that AEW will see that as the swing and a miss that it was, and pivots back to focusing on what people enjoy about AEW.
I hope so. Sometimes that AEW is like, now that WWE isn't being so stubborn about their plans, that AEW is starting to be stubborn about their plans. It's kind of like the other side of the pendulum. And I'm like, So we'll see. With that said, you can catch us up here at Power the Number Two, the Smarks, and all the socials, or OccupyProWrestling.com, which is over here actually. And so I'm Chris from Occupy Pro Wrestling. That's Alex as well. Alex, play us out.